We are back to recap Wednesdays and Thursdays episodes, but first, let's roll the intro. So Wednesdays and Thursdays episodes cover the veto as well as the eviction, and we see a lot happen in this little bit of time. Now, Wednesday's episode opens up right after the nominations of Kevin and Keisha, and Nicole F. is the first to talk in the diary room. She says she's confused by the nominations and wished Janelle and Kaser could have gone up because she doesn't trust Janelle as far as she could throw her, and she says she can't even pick her up. Then we get Kevin in the DR saying how he feels like he's letting people down because he's an all-star and he's already on the block. However, shortly after, we get him immediately starting to work on saving his game. Then we get a conversation between Cody and Kevin talking about Kevin being on the block. Kevin says that he's not mad and he understands, but he wants to start kind of a down-low-mance where they work together. Cody says that he could see himself working with him and kind of agrees to that concept. However, in the diary room, we do get Kevin saying he's not sure if he can trust Cody. Then we get a conversation between Janelle and Kaser talking about how they want to save Keisha. However, when they go to save her and start putting in that work, people start to catch on to the fact that they're trying to save her, trying to build a side, and they have to back off, that way they don't play too hard too early. Then, as a break between all the game talk, we get a very touching conversation between Kaser and Devon talking about the hardships and a lot of the social injustice in the world. Then, back to game talk, we get a conversation between Cody and Enzo in the HOH room. Enzo is saying how he's not sure who he wants to vote out, and Cody's saying that he probably just wants to keep Kevin this week. Enzo agrees, and then they start talking about a final two deal. That final two deal then becomes named The Root. Then back away from game talk, we get a touching conversation from Ian about autism. Then it's time for the veto competition. We have Kevin, Keisha, and Cody all standing up at the front of the room, drawing players. Cody draws Tyler first. Then Kevin draws house guest choice and looks at Enzo and said, "Would you mind playing with me? Do you want to play with me? Will you play?" And he said yes. And then Keisha draws Ian. So now we have our select few who are going to play in the first veto competition of the season. Now, unfortunately, I think it's important to note that no matter who they choose, in the first week of the game, it's not likely that they're going to take them off the block. You don't want to get too much blood on your hands. The HOH isn't going to want you to do that. So it's more of a game for yourself rather than hoping that you can rely on your allies. Then in a wacky, banana-rocking, fruit-stacking type of competition, very similar to ones that we have seen in the past, we get the house guests fighting it out. Kevin comes very close but just misses his buzzer and times out. Enzo goes on to win this competition. Then obviously Kevin thinks that Enzo will use the veto on him because Kevin picked him to play in the veto competition. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Enzo says he needs to check with Cody first. And when you're the HOH the first week, usually unless you have a specific target, you want as less blood on your hands as possible, which means you don't want the veto used. We then get the veto ceremony where Enzo says that he has decided not to use the power of veto. So then after the veto ceremony, we move into Thursday's episode, and we get this first DR from Keisha where she says she's just going to remain cool and calm throughout the week and not go home first. So in a typical Big Brother season, we often get the house guests chatting throughout the house, saying who they want to stay and who they want to go home. But unfortunately, this is All-Stars, and they've all played this game before. They know not to rock the boat until you absolutely have to. So then we move on to the pitches between Kevin and Keisha and Cody. Now, Kevin's pitch is very useful, and he says that if he were to ever win HOH, he wouldn't put Cody up on the block. This helps his game a ton and keeps Cody on his side. On the flip side, we get Keisha, who is asking Cody if she is his target or if he wants Kevin gone. Now, obviously, as the first HOH, you're not going to say, like, you're my target or he's my target. You want to kind of keep that blood off your hands. So he says that nobody's really his target and he wants to work with everybody. Now, when she hears that, she thinks she has a chance, and so she tells him that he needs to go to different house guests and tell people that he wants Kevin out. This will help solidify her game and keep her in the game. And unfortunately, there's just not enough there for Cody to get that blood on his hands. Then after this conversation with Kevin and Keisha, he then moves on to talk with his allies. He tells them that he's not going to really pick and choose who he wants to go. He wants Keisha to go, but he's not going to tell anybody that, because if he does, then it'll kind of draw lines and show his cards. And at that point, he'd be obviously working against Janelle and Kaser. Now, I think this is important because All-Stars may be a new era for Big Brother. It may be something where new house guests kind of rely on their game. So I'm hoping that in the future we have either more troublemakers week one, or we don't have people who are so hesitant to say names. Doing so makes it a very boring season, and while it's a good game move, it doesn't make for great TV. Then finally, we get to the eviction ceremony where they both give their speeches. Kevin's is very nice. Keisha's is a little bit attacking, but it doesn't go too far. Then Keisha goes home on a vote of 13-0. Then after the eviction ceremony, we get the HOH competition, and it's a quiz game where they have to watch something on the TV. Now on that screen was Big Johnson, who has played the alien, the granny, the mad businessman. He's been in Big Brother a whole lot, so it was a lot of fun to see him act. Now this is one of those HOH competitions where it feels like it ends a lot sooner than they expected. Within like the first 4 questions, we seem to have lost like half the house guests, and then shortly after, only one person answered true, everybody answered false, and the question was true, so it was like a clean sweep, and Memphis takes home the HOH. Now this will be Memphis's first HOH he has ever won. Now unfortunately this was not a live eviction, this was a pre-recorded episode. However, going forward, many on Twitter and many in the house have said that was the only one that was going to be pre-recorded. The remaining live evictions should actually be live. Alright, before we go, we first must record our goodbye message to Keisha, so roll the background, cue the music, let's do this. Keisha, I'm going to be sad to see you go. It was really exciting when we heard your name was going to be a part of this cast list. Unfortunately, your social game was incredible, but your game talk was not. I wish you the best of luck, and from a Big Brother superfan, and I'm sure many others, thank you. Thank you guys for checking out this video. I hope this helps recap those 2 crazy episodes that we saw. If you have any questions or comments or any moments that I missed, make sure to leave those down below. Make sure to leave a like, hit subscribe, and ring that bell. I'll see you guys in the next one.